living in front of you. Okay, I think we're ready to start. We don't want to waste any more time. Welcome, everyone. Lovely that you're meeting each other. This is what we want to do today. People from different cohorts and different courses of study. So fantastic that you can join us. I hope you really have an enjoyable day today. I hope that you meet some new people and come away with some new opportunities, because that's what we like to do in alumni relations, connect people. I want to introduce you to Associate Professor Sofya Isaakyan. She is going to, well, let you introduce yourself, but you are in for a treat today. You've chosen a really good course to come to. She's one of our favourite professors. Don't tell the others. I'll hand over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to RSM. Very nice to have you back, and some of your faces, to be honest, are very familiar. So later on, we can check in at what time, at which point, when did we meet, but I'm very happy to welcome you here, and I'm very happy to be here today. So today, our session will be very much about diversity, as well as very much about how to make sure that everyone belongs. But before diving into the topic, I will briefly tell you about myself and about my background. So I'm an associate professor here at RSM, and within my role, I engage in three broad activities. The first one, oops, it did that more. Yeah, now. So the first one relates to research. I do research on the topics of leadership development, as well as I do research on the topic of employee voice behavior. What do you think what voice behavior is about? Any ideas? What is it that I'm studying when I'm saying that I'm researching voice? Try to guess. What do you think? What is it that I'm studying? Actually, it will be very relevant also to the topic of our today's session.
Communication?
It relates to communication, but it's not communication in general. It's something more specific, but we are getting closer. So any other ideas what voice behavior is about?
During the different conversations, how would the different employees take others into account? Diversity is one of the factors, but there can be other motives as well. Going a bit more into details.
What you are saying, whether people consider others' opinions or not, it is relevant to the topic of voice, but it's not necessarily voice. But what is it voice behavior? What does it mean? For example, let's say what the person should do in order to say that this person engaged in voice behavior. Any ideas?
How you react to certain voices from certain people differently than others.
So you mean the tone?
Like if my boss speaks and the same exact words are spoken by my colleague and subordinate, we behave differently towards these.
Okay, so how differently we react to the same message. Okay, it's all about the message, but it's not exactly that. I saw another hand here.
Maybe the powerful of the voice of the person, like how their words impact to others.
Okay, so voice indeed, it's about impacted, but it's not still there. Okay, I have a final try, yes.
Voice will show your emotion, confidence, that kind of the message.
Okay, so what do you mean by that? So what is it then voice behavior that you say it's reflected in emotions and other things?
The behavior is not shown by your gesture or anything on your body.
So non-verbal behavior.
Yeah.
Okay. So generally, when I say that I study voice behavior, the first thing that comes to people's mind, it's actually that I study the tone of voice, intonation, sound. This is what people think, but that's not what I study. So in essence, what I study is when employees speak up. In essence, when employees raise change-oriented ideas, suggestions, or concerns to challenge the status quo within that organization. For example, you go to your manager or you go to your team members and you say, okay, the way we run our marketing strategy is not the most efficient way. We can significantly improve it. So when you speak up or when you raise certain ideas for improvement or when you speak up with certain problems or issues. So this is what voice behavior is. So in that sense, it is communication, but it's a very specific communication when you question existing practices and procedures within organization. Is that clear? Yeah, so this is in essence what I study, and I look a lot at how managers react to voice, because technically we all say that managers should be open, managers should be responsive to voice, managers should appreciate the voice. How much do you think this reflects the reality?
Depends on the manager.
Depends on the manager.
And what do you say?
What?
And what do you say?
And what do you say exactly? But in reality, we often see that managers can react very defensively. My PhD dissertation was on that, when actually I could show how much managers would perceive speaking up about a certain procedure as a very personal threat. So they would really take it personally, although I'm talking about the idea, but the manager thinks that I'm saying you are stupid. So in that sense, but there are much more complications. I will not dive into that, but in essence, this is what I study. But thanks to doing research, I'm very passionate about doing leadership development. And I'm very passionate about doing such workshops as we are doing today. So within RSM, I'm very much engaged in across different executive programs that we have. So I'm the lead faculty for our strategic leadership development course in our global executive MBA. I also teach in our open programs, customized programs. So in that sense, I work a lot with the leaders, which I value a lot because for me, it's very important to be close to practice and not only focus on the research that I do. And related to that, the third area of my activities relates to bridging academia and practice. In that sense, I do sometimes more consultancy type of projects where I advise organizational leaders on how to address certain challenges that they have using certain evidence-based solutions based on the research that is there. So this is about myself, and I'm very much looking forward to learning more about you. And before we start, I would really like to ask you to write down your name on a piece of paper and put it so that when you are talking, it's there. Okay. Well,
do you want some bigger ones?
Yeah, it would be helpful because otherwise each time you speak, I will be coming first like this. So it would be very helpful. So while we are getting started, if you could write down your name, so then when you are speaking, I could also see who is speaking. Okay, so we're gonna get started. Thank you.
This thing. Yes, it is an engineering challenge to start with, not what we signed up for.
There we go.
Fantastic.
This is the first challenge of this workshop. Yeah. I'm putting down your names, making sure the paper stands. Perfect. Perfect. Thank you all so much. Very nice. Okay, so we will start talking about diversity. And when we talk about diversity, I think what's important to mention that we refer to a characteristic of a social grouping that reflects the degrees to which there are objective and subjective differences among individuals, right? So when we talk about diversity, it's not just about objective differences, but it's a lot about whether we perceive as there are differences or not, right? So it's about both things. So let me ask you, when you look around this room, what dimensions of diversity do you see? Or do you notice? Cultures, good, what else? Age, good, what else? Gender, what else?
I want to say ability, but you can't always see that.
You can say some people, I'm sure some people have a much better ability to dance here than others, and many other abilities. I think there are clearly some diversity there. What else?
Generation.
Generations, true, very important one nowadays. Good. What else?
Professional background.
Professional background, good. What else? Do you all have the same personality?
No.
Do you all have the same beliefs? Do you all have the same values? Most likely not. And we can continue. But in essence, all of these characteristics that you mentioned, they could be organized into two broader categories: deep level diversity and surface level diversity. So what is interesting that generally when I ask the question, what type of dimensions of diversity are here in the room? What do you notice? People often start with surface level diversity. Gender, race, age, physical ability. So things that you could easily observe. While the more I ask the question, the more things start popping up like attitudes, beliefs, maybe intelligence, personality, values, and things like that. So this is level diversity. These are the things that we cannot maybe immediately observe, but things which are equally important when we talk about diversity. Why I'm talking about this? Because generally within organizations, when we talk about diversity, what do we talk about?
Gender.
So we mostly talk about gender, maybe race or nationality, right? So how often do you talk about this diversity?
We do quite a lot, but we're actually not trying to, for example, have people with completely different values. We're actually trying to find people who share values. And I think we're also trying to recruit intelligent people. So I think, are we even looking for a lot of diversity in that deep level?
Okay, so you talk about it, and that is interesting, right? So indeed, there are maybe certain dimensions of diversity on which you would like to be similar, like core values. Although even related to that, I would maybe challenge it a bit, because maybe it would be helpful, for example, I'm thinking about, for example, to have a balance in terms of people who have more, let's say for some people have a very long-term orientation, and for them, thinking about success in the long term is something very important, while for other people, they more focus on short term. So this is something that maybe, I'm not saying within your organization, but might be valuable to have more balance, right? So another thing, for example, if we talk about personality, of course, we would all like to have nice people in the group. This is something general. But at the same time, let's talk about another dimension. For example, there is this distinction between locomotion and assessment focus. So people high on locomotion, these are the people who immediately go into action, who want to make sure that something is happening, action is happening. People high on assessment focus are the ones who analyze deeply, who really want to make sure they considered all the different options. So in that sense, if you have a team or organization that is mostly of people assessment focus, you have very profound analysis, but nothing is happening much. If you have people high on mostly on locomotion focus, these are the people who would be actually making sure things are happening, but a lot of sloppy things will happen. A lot of decisions will be taken without thorough analysis. So in that sense, there are also certain dimensions here that maybe you would like to consider having more balance. So in that sense, I think the first thing that I want to already take away from this discussion about diversity is actually, and also for the rest of our today's session, today when we will be talking about diversity, we're not just going to talk about age, gender, but we are covering all the diversity. Because all of this is equally important, and there has been a lot of research that shows the effect of both types of diversity being quite similar. One thing that I want to share with you, specifically related to ethnic diversity, actually, yes?
Building on what she just said, I can't see her name, sorry.
Julia.
So, in a real world, in the industry, okay, what we can measure, because diversity and inclusion is a big word over last 10 years, and it would be there for next 20 years, let's say. Okay, so companies needs to see how we can really measure and show to the outside world that we are following the diversity. And what you can measure is the surface level. How would you measure the deep level diversity?
So all of the things you can measure. For each thing, if you want, I can send you a scale.
But
right, so you can definitely measure, and a lot of companies, even during recruitment, they actually do some personality tests. So in that sense, these are the things that, the other thing that I don't think the issue is so much. First of all, you're right that most of the organizations, when they show statistics, they show these statistics, right?
Yeah.
I think the whole question is, okay, they show the numbers, but they don't show how much do these people actually feel included. Then I think that's one problem that we're going to talk about today. But this thing, I would say I'm sharing this more with you as people who are either already, I'm sure some of you are already leading teams, or some of you will be leading teams in the future. So in that sense, I really want to encourage you when you think about I want to have a diverse team to not think just only in these dimensions, especially if your organization is telling you we value diversity, but to really think also in terms of these dimensions. What are the things that actually you would like to have similar in terms of maybe certain values, but also what are the things in terms of personality, in terms of abilities, skills, what are the things that you would like to have diverse? And it is definitely possible to measure all of it. So in case some of you are interested in any of the dimensions of diversity and wondering how to measure it, there are so many scales that I'm more than happy to share with you, and you can keep on measuring things. So yeah.
Oh, sorry. And do you think it depends on what the company or even the team needs in that specific moment?
Exactly. So that's another question, right? That a lot of organizations say, just let's have more diversity. We need more diversity. There is a lot of research that proves that diversity is good. At the same time, if you are the company or your team is doing some very specific type of job where actually maybe something very mechanical, something where not a lot of innovation is needed, not a lot of creativity is needed, then you are much more likely to be more effective in more homogeneous group. So in that sense, whenever I teach leadership or organizational behavior, I always say it depends. And indeed, it's very important to really analyze whether you need diversity within your team. And it's not that I want to discourage you, but we will get to that diversity is a beautiful thing, but it has its own challenges. So in that sense, it's very important to really think about, do you need diversity? What type of diversity you need? And then we will talk about how to manage this diversity. Yeah. Maybe one question to you all. How many of you are actually working in a more cross-cultural teams where you have multiple nationalities within the teams or within your organization? Okay, I see quite some hands. So then I think it would be relevant. So one thing that I quickly want to share with you, because I think it might be something useful, it's something very practical. So let me open Google. So on Google, you can basically type Hofstede dimensions. And it will be here on the slide, you will see it. Basically, I will add it to the title. So you type Hofstede dimensions, then you go to this website. And Hofstede, what he did, he basically developed initially 5. Then he added another dimension, 6 dimensions on which all the cultures differ. Have any of you heard of Hofstede dimensions? Yeah, I see 2 people, 3 people nodding. So in that sense, Hofstede developed these 6 dimensions, and then you can insert the countries and get the scores on each country. So give me 6 countries. Oh, no, sorry, I think here you can insert 4 countries. So give me 4 countries. Netherlands, France, Japan, yes, and United States. Can I type? No, I can type only 4. Okay. So here what you can see. You can see how each country, so you see the color of the country and then you see the bars, right? So this is France, Japan, Netherlands, and United States. And then you see each country score on all 6 dimensions. So I will not go into detail into each dimension. You can read about each dimension of the website, but maybe let's talk about power distance. So is there anybody who can tell what power distance is about, what this dimension is about? Eli, you said you are familiar with Hofstede, so yeah.
Yeah, maybe if I recall it from my IBA time, it's from the hierarchy. So I see France is biased in this example. So I think in France, there's more bureaucracy, then it's more important with formalities.
Okay, yeah, indeed. So power distance, it's very much about how having formal hierarchy determines the type of relationship and the real distance that you have between the person and the person who is different on hierarchy. For example, there is me and there is my manager. In countries high on power distance, these are the countries where I would very likely gonna think twice before speaking up to my manager. This is the country where I would really feel uncomfortable disagreeing with my manager. This is the country where my manager tells me something to do, I'm much more likely just to go and to do it because having formal hierarchy really gives you a lot of power. While countries which are more egalitarian, and Netherlands is considered as one of the more egalitarian countries, these are the countries where even though somebody is your manager, you still feel more or less on the same level in terms of when you talk to each other, you feel more comfortable challenging each other, disagreeing with each other, and so on. So for example, you can see that Netherlands is 38, Japan is 54, for example, and France is much higher than Japan, which is actually interesting because I would think that Japan would be higher. So, but yeah. So, and then, so there is, for example, another one, motivation, towards achievement and success. Let's see if it comes.
The Netherlands stood out for being very low on that one. So is this success in the very traditional sense of financial success?
Yeah, so basically it is another title for this one. Okay. Let's see. Another title for this one, it's masculinity versus femininity. So countries which are high in motivation towards achievement and success, these are the countries where people really care about career successes, where they really work long hours. These are also the countries where there is low work-life balance.
Yes, I remember. So back when I studied, this was indeed still called masculinity and femininity. I already found it very annoying back then. I'm glad they changed that.
So in that sense, for example, Netherlands, you can see it's 40. So in that sense, Netherlands is the country where once it's 5 p.m., everybody goes home. Or most of the Dutch people go, again, no stereotyping or something, but that's a bit of how it is, right? Because in this country, people value what?
It's a good culture.
It is a good culture. Maybe this is the reason why we're all here, right? To some extent, because we value that. So in that sense, this is the country where there is a high work-life balance. Well, for example, I'm originally Armenian. I grew up in Russia. And these are the countries where I think the score would be much higher. And these are the countries, for example, when I was working in Russia, when it was, for example, 7 p.m., my job would finish 6 p.m. But if my manager is still sitting and working, I felt very uncomfortable standing and leaving. In the Netherlands, I think this is much less likely to happen, again, due to cultural difference. So, and I can give many other examples of this, but why I'm sharing this, I think this hosted the dimensions, they provide a good insights about certain cultural difference, about how cultural differences may explain certain behaviors of people with whom you are working, of your team members. So in that sense, for example, if you are leading a cross-cultural team, I think it would be very valuable actually to put the countries of the people in your team into this thing and to look, and this might explain you certain differences. One thing which I want to highlight, I'm not telling you that, let's say, all Dutch people act like this, all Japanese people act like this, right? So of course, there are a lot of factors that play the role. So it's not that I want to put people into boxes, but still what is important to understand that these cultural differences, they often affect the way we behave. So I was 5 years old when I moved to Russia. So I lived in Armenia only 5 years. Then when I was 21 when I moved to the Netherlands. Still, sometimes even I'm impressed how much the fact that I'm originally Armenian affects the way I behave in certain situations, which is very interesting because I was only 5 years old when I moved to Russia, so I almost never lived in Armenia. But again, maybe this is about me, but still cultural differences, they still affect to a certain extent the way you behave. The more cross-cultural experiences you have, the less likely that your cultural background would affect, right? So in that sense, again, my own example, I think I'm neither very Armenian, neither very Russian, neither very Dutch. So in that sense, in each country, I notice there are certain things which are very different from the way I do, right? Just because of cross-culture. And I think many of you have also a lot of cross-cultural experiences, which would be very likely to affect the extent to which you behave accordingly or whatever it is, the way your culture is described. But still, this is a nice tool to be aware of and to maybe check in case you have cross-cultural tips. So let's see if it comes there. Yes, it's fine. Okay. So let's go back to our slide. Yeah. And another thing, if you haven't read it yet, I also, in case you are interested in cultural differences, I also really recommend this book because this is a very nice book to get a better understanding about cultural differences and how they affect. Because even, for example, last year I was doing executive education in Saudi Arabia, and I was reading this book to learn more about Saudi Arabia so that when I'm there, I'm prepared to teach in that culture. And that was very, very helpful. So I really recommend. Okay. So my next question to you, does diversity benefit teams and organizations? Yes. So how does it benefit?
Creativity.
Creativity, good. What else? Perspective. Different perspectives, good. What else?
Not getting stuck in way of thinking, kind of what Tanya was saying.
Yeah, related to what Tanya said. So getting different perspectives, good, good. What else?
Diverse talent pool.
So which can potentially make it make you more flexible, adaptive. Okay, what else?
Better serving diverse customer groups.
So you can address new challenges or different challenges or demands. Good. Also, a lot of learning happens in diverse groups, right? Since you are different, you can also learn from each other. So indeed, there is a lot of research that proves that diversity benefits. One of these examples, it was published in McKinsey, that basically within the companies where the board consists of more diverse members in terms of gender or ethnicity, these companies are generally doing better. And there is a lot of other research. This is one of the examples. Next question, does diversity hurt teams and organizations?
Sometimes we cannot go to the right decision, let's say.
Yeah. So what is interesting about diversity? So everything what you said. On the one hand, diversity is greater pool of resources, more flexible, adaptive, greater pool of talent, greater capacity for learning, so more adaptive, differences in perspectives. At the same time, the more diversity we have, the more we face with the situation that there is less trust, less information sharing, much more relationship conflicts happen in diverse teams than in homogeneous teams, lower often satisfaction. So in that sense, what is important when we talk about diversity is that on the one hand, diversity can provide a lot of potential and opportunities. But also, the more diverse team you have, the more likely it is that actually your team might fail. This is why I always say that, again, it's very important to say, let's have more diversity, let's increase diversity. But the question actually to you and to all of us, am I ready to manage diversity that I have? Because what a lot of organizations do, they just put people together and then good luck. So in that sense, maybe one of the takeaways already for you is basically understanding that creating diverse team, it also requires much more effective leadership from you. And it's much more responsibility in a sense that these teams are much more likely to fail. Because for people, it is often difficult to work in a diverse team if it is not managed effectively. Can you relate to this?
Yes.
Yes. So I can imagine that each of you have certain experiences when you realize that actually it might be very difficult to work in a diverse team. And in the past, I was teaching in the full-time MBA program. And one of the reasons why people who did full-time MBA here, I'm sure there are, yes, because I could see some very familiar faces, so I was sure that there are people here who did. So I'm sure that many of you and many other full-time MBA students choose to do MBA because of diversity that is here at RSM. But also the level of clashes and personal conflicts that I have seen in some of the MBA teams was also very impressive just because of the level of diversity that was there, right? So in that sense, but this is just one of the examples. This happens a lot also within organizations. So this is why the fundamental question is how to realize the potential of diversity that you have. Because if I show you research, and this is a very tiny part of the research of diversity, we can see that there are studies which show positive effects. There are studies that show negative effects of diversity. There are studies which show no effect. So in essence, it all depends. And we will dive to see what it depends on. Maybe another thing which I will quickly show you. So this was the study that was run in 1991, so a long time ago, but I think it's very illustrative of the effect of diversity, what we are discussing now. So what basically they found in this paper that they were looking at the performance of cross-cultural teams versus single culture teams. And they found that cross-cultural teams, they either showed very good performance or they showed extremely poor performance. And single culture groups, they were the ones that showed average performance. So in that sense, there is a big question mark in terms of the way diversity might unfold. And what is it that we need to do to realize the potential of diversity? What is it that we need to do to make sure that we are here rather than here? Yeah. So I think it's time for you to start testing that, to see what you can do in order to manage diversity. So we will be doing now a short exercise. So I would like to ask you to organize into teams. I haven't counted how many people you are. You are supposed to be 17, so 15, yeah? Okay, if you are 15, then could you please organize into 3 teams of 5? And maybe organize yourself with people whom you do not know. So just randomly organize yourself into group of 5, into groups of. Yeah.
But then you
Are we 4?
I guess.
Okay.
One person.
You're in, okay, you got That's how we're 5 I don't know.
It's okay.
Okay, I was saying. Okay.
Are you happy?
So you are. Yes. You are 5.
Wow. And another 5. Okay, there was a person who left. Does anybody know if he will be back or not?
We'll adjust.
Okay. Then we just proceed like that. You still have to start here. Okay. Okay, we don't know. So let's continue. So what we will be doing, I want you to imagine, actually, let me correct. Sorry. I think the time is going. So actually, we are no longer in 2027 this year, but we are in 2057 here. So we are really ahead of time. And let me see. Yeah. And you are actually working in an automobile industry. So within your team, you actually have, so we have teams of 5. So you have basically 5 members in your team. You have a finance VP, you have operations VP, you have marketing VP, you have R&D VP, and you have a CEO. And together you will need to take a decision which market you want to enter, with which car, and how you're going to sell the car. So what we will be doing, I will be providing you, each of you will get a case, and there will be different roles. My advice to you, do not pick the role according to where you are working currently. So for example, if you are working in finance, do not try to pick the finance role. And trust me, everybody can manage each of these roles. You will have all the information needed. So my suggestion to you would be rather pick randomly which role you would like to take. So the way we're going to do it now, so I will distribute the case, and first you will have 5 minutes to read individually the case. And then after 5 minutes, you will start the team discussion. But before you start the team discussion, I will provide you with some additional information. Okay. So now I see that we have 60 people, correct? Then because we were 5, 5, 5. Yeah. Okay, my apologies. We will do a little reorganization. So let's have 4 teams of 4. So if we can, maybe from each team to get from one team 2 people. So then let's have 4 teams of 4. Then I think otherwise you have too many people.
Each team one person and being two.
Yes, individual there, and also from each team also one person. Okay. My apologies. Diverse. Okay. So. Oh yeah. Yeah. So now you will function without the CEO. So within your teams, you will have 4 roles, but the CEO will not be part of the team. Okay, so now I'm going to distribute the case, and you take 5 minutes to read it and to already start thinking what would be your solution. And then after 5 minutes, you will start your team discussion. So I will, no, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So actually, let me do like this, so you random pick. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. You're ready to pick. Okay. 3, 4. You're ready to see. You're ready to pick. Okay. You can join the team. You will have a seat. Okay, so you will now start your team discussion. After 15 minutes, I need to hear from you what is your decision on three things. Which market you're gonna enter, with which car, and how you're gonna price the car. So you need to give me your decision at 3:43. Let's do like this. So at 3:43, I need your decision. But before you start your discussion, there is a minor detail that I want to share with you. So within your team, some of you are English speakers and some of you are non-English speakers. So finance, operations, and the CEO in one of the teams, you are English speakers. What does it mean? It means that you can freely communicate, you can say everything, what you think to everyone in the group. Marketing and R&D, you are non-English speakers. What does that mean? You can still communicate with your team, but the only way for you to communicate is to write it on paper and show it to your team.
But we can write English, right?
You can write it in English. So your level is intermediate, more or less. So you have certain inner constraints with speaking up in English. So the team can speak to you and you understand everything. But for you to respond, you need to write on paper and show it to the team. Another important thing, marketing and R&D. Between each other, you can talk. So what that means, so marketing and R&D, if you want to talk to each other, you can talk, but talk in such a way so that the rest of the team doesn't hear you. So any questions related to English, non-English speakers?
Are marketing and R&D allowed to talk to each other?
You can talk to each other, but you should talk in such a way so that the rest of the team
So
doesn't
the
hear you.
finance and operations don't hear.
Yes.
You guys have time to.
When you talk finance and operations, you write on paper and you show it to the team. Okay, so we start, so give me your decision at 3:44. You start now.
Yeah, but I thought the price
Yes.
It's just that you have like.
I guess I can share what information I got. But I, as my behavior, I want to sell the card at a profit. The total market, say buying a car for 20,000 or 30,000.
Almost yeah, so it's all
Oh, it's fine for
Sorry, so we are allowed to talk, we're not allowed to talk to you guys. But you guys are allowed to talk to. Yeah, you guys are allowed to talk.
We don't have.
There are issues with the.
Because for me, I need the
Maybe there's like first.
Yeah, well, who knows the old name?
You chose your own, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So we don't think that.
In terms of market size, China and South America
For this one, it has already production. We manufacturing. It is a no. Perfect. And for me and the brands, yeah, so we have to choose between these two.
Yeah.
And in terms of market, I think we all have the same information. I do have the information about size of people.
China.
What is the range that people are making?
Yeah, I have received
Percentages. And how many people are there investing with the percentage, that what is the addressable market? So I do have the information, so if you need that, we are going to see the information. Information that I have. What
Yeah,
information.
so except that it has been
Yeah, for instance, I have satisfaction from China and India and South America, especially in China. It's 500 and all these people.
We do have a plan for the small to medium size companies.
So I'm like.
For now. Slide already on pricing. Any precise price?
Actually, it's just
Fast enough or something, and then show me each part.
Okay, I don't have any information about the difference.
in which price segment did you?
5.6K.
Yeah, but for the different markets.
Between 20,000.
And batteries.
So,
Oh,
and
included.
then there's people who wanted to buy. These are the three price tags that we have.
Every information.
I just speak up. I think she should want to see the.
I think it's not allowed. Yeah, we are not allowed to show the consent. We have. So you want to know that you have to pay experience for. Decide on the price we are going to sell.
I don't understand.
Sorry, let me
Yeah. It kind of seems like home would be the better. Make sure. You have to decide the marketing costs. That's right.
How big can be marketing?
Decide the marketing strategy. Production costs. Okay, marketing.
So first we need to decide about the
Sell it at. So we sell more of the market. We sell it at 20. Which is like, we can price it, yeah, price it high. Like this one is 12.
It's not
So you can price it up to
saturate.
it seems like yes.
Yeah.
The R&D, I mean, if we want to price it up, it's very potentially do that, I don't know. But that seems like.
Yes.
prices for both the cars, home and.
So we might say.
Myself, I put that.
We have the same information about the market.
Close to 30K,
New.
then 43%.
There's many cars.
Five, 10.
You're closer.
Okay, so your KPI is to sell as many cars.
Yeah.
More than half.
In that sense, for you.
We said that there was a man.
Number of people.
It's not as well as.
You take 55%. You also
That was less than.
So we all agree. Okay.
And then I'm looking for the, based on the price we chose, 19K.
Most of the cars.
Bigger volume, bigger post.
So.
Yes, that makes sense.
Less than 20K.
Yeah, so the RTDP has a point. And
Resale is then. China market share.
Yeah, we can always go higher.
5 minutes.
We can either 20 or 30K because there's no other options in the story. So it's portion of people we hope for being willing to buy this from marketers. Because some they just more.
We can do that.
I mean, it doesn't specify, but I would like to sell my cars.
We should, we don't want to go for a.
Because it's a 57 people know. They won't know. China is
That's also my assumption that we can really start for China.
because I was also
I don't know if it's
for the China. 72% damn. It's yeah, it's not realistic to know what is your manufacturing cost and marketing cost. That's it.
Okay, but
This is
then, yeah,
Fixed cost.
then China, but then
India.
20,000.
Are we
So
so
why
why
India?
I need
Because it's
20%.
smaller.
19?
So
Sure.
it should be somewhere around the
The final.
It depends because if you're able to sell more number of cars,
America.
And then we would want to price it.
It's unlimited. There is no in South America. Marketing.
And then we can sell more. And then we charge 30 for our base car.
so that we covered all the questions. Choose which one to sell.
China.
That's where that electric battery.
Was less than 20 years. That's
Like they probably in China.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
and
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
So we want to.
But China is a price. 18.7 or 18.75. 18.
So this the production is 10K, because I have two,
exactly.
and the
Because
battery is 3. But then.
calculation mistake. China is even lower.
That's good.
Just 20.
Can I go?
Too expensive for reasoning everything.
Yeah.
You
No, you guys know we're not allowed to talk, so you guys have But yeah, that's it. She said.
Bring India with some.
I need your decision in 2 minutes.
See about the range. We have in-house like have an effect on our and what you have to use longer style.
You have like one market, then because that gives you like more grounded information about the market. So I could see it in the first meeting, but also there were Spain.
Industry been switching. And then those bodies are.
Yeah, so I did not agree.
Which I just missed it in all that at the last one. That's right. You always double checking.
Okay, give me decision, your decision.
I'll give it that.
Which one?
Import.
Oh, market, China, price is 1999. Okay, your team, your decision.
Decision.
Sorry? Our decision was. What?
Oh,
And the price is 18.7.
Exactly.
And we decided to go to China.
Okay. Yogi.
And then here,
Mm-hmm.
we have some price range, so without battery 18K, with battery 20.
I need one price.
Without battery 18K. Without
Okay. And your decision.
With 90.9 per hour.
19.9.
199.
South America.
What, sorry?
South America.
South America.
You still need like.
Okay. Got it.
Do you have any number?
So, I hear some non-English speakers are speaking. You are
No, but I already said.
Okay, did I put your number right? Because, yeah, okay, good. So these are your decisions, but before we get into your decisions, I'm very curious to hear, how you experience this exercise. So first of all, I would like to hear English speakers. So English speakers, how was it for you?
It's quite tough to, like, because we have to wait for the other person to write.
Mm.
And sometimes, it made the communication slower.
Okay. So you felt that you had to wait for the non-English speakers. Okay. Other English speakers, how did you experience it? How was it for you? English speakers
I
first.
think for us it was quite efficient because the non-English speakers were doing the calculations.
Okay. So you had some good people to basically do some work for you. Okay. Other English speakers, how was it? Yeah.
For us, like, let's say we just try to think all the information that we have, because they cannot talk, but they can write something. So we have a paper on the table, we just write all the information together, and then we start to make a decision.
Okay. Other English speakers, how did you experience it?
It was fine, like we came to know what the KPI is for all the people, write it down, and then concisely we came to know what information we all do have
Okay.
and what we need to deliver it at the end.
So it was okay, it was quite good. So now non-English speakers. Now you can speak. Now you can say everything what you think. So non-English speakers, how did you experience this?
Yeah, it was a bit frustrating, and I need to work on my handwriting, I think.
Okay. So you said it was frustrating. What was frustrating?
I mean, it takes a lot longer to write than to speak, so then it feels like I'm not used to not being able to express myself when others are kind of faster at a conversation.
So you fell behind.
Yeah.
Okay. Other non-English speakers, how did it feel?
I had the same feeling. What I did is I tried to organize really well my thoughts, because it's different when you think and speak and that you think and you write. So I try to make a chart so that it looks like they can understand what I'm trying to say and put the information so there will be easy for them.
Okay, so you were really trying to think what to do to make it comfortable for them.
Yes.
Okay. Other non-English speakers, how was it for you?
I think we go really smoothly because they are willing to take time to wait for us to write something.
Okay. So in your case, you felt that they were taking the time. Okay. Other non-English speakers, what else? What else did you experience? Can you tell me what did you feel during this exercise?
Even when we write, people don't understand the same thing.
Okay, so you felt that you are not understood.
Yeah.
Okay, what else did you feel? Erin, were you English or non-English?
I was English.
Oh, sorry. So you were English speaker, right? Erin? Yeah, and you were non-English.
Right.
So how did it feel for you?
Fine.
Fine? Good.
It was like talking, like normally, sending emails and there's this communication.
Okay.
It's just clarified, something.
There was a struggle. I started reading. Who can speak English and cannot speak. Like who can speak, they want to listen more, and the other party they want to say more, but there is a gap. There is a space between them.
I realized that usually in this kind of setting, I might want to take a coordinating role to like structure the conversation. And of course, if you can't speak, that's impossible.
It's very hard to be the
Yeah.
one who coordinates. Okay. Who was taking the decision in the team? Was it a team decision or was certain members more taking decision than others?
I feel like as a non-English speaker, I was pushing an English speaker to make the call.
Okay, so you felt they are the ones who are going to take the decision.
Who should?
Who should take it?
Yeah, we should, because I was not allowed to communicate other than on paper. So I was like nudging the person next to me, hey, you're an English speaker. Please sign off on it and take the vote.
Okay. For others, was it also the case that English speakers were taking the decision?
No, we were a data-driven team. We were a data-driven team.
They have the extra
It's communication of the data, which was funny. We did
Yeah.
like some of these, we made some assumptions that like in the end was a bit of a surprise.
We will actually look soon. Okay, okay. So in your case, so basically you say that English speakers and non-English speakers were equally involved in
Yeah.
making the decision in your team.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. In your team.
I think for non-English speakers, because at some point you guys were talking because they had talked to each other. And so they arrived at it, like we talked or communicated all together and then. You arrived at a decision that you were very confident about, it seemed.
Yeah, we basically pushed our decision on.
Okay. Okay. Good. So non-English speakers even managed to push. This is, I see, quite rare. This. Okay. Okay. And did you have one team or did you rather have subgroups with it? Did you notice having subgroups?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so there were two sub-teams. Okay, in other groups?
Ours, I think initially is like a bit of a subgroup, but we managed to like regroup.
It's actually, I really want to applaud you because at least all of you remain together. Once I was running this in one of the full-time MBA groups, and then what happened, it was hilarious. So I said, okay, we start the exercise. And then two non-English speakers come to me and say, Sofya, where are our team members? I said, I don't know. So what happened the moment I said we start the exercise, English speakers stood up and left. Non-English speakers didn't even know where they went. So in that sense, you at least, so, but that's interesting. So you created the subgroups. Maybe one more final question, because I'm keeping the time in my mind and we need to make sure we cover also the processes that happen here. But I'm curious because some of you said that you felt a bit frustrated as a non-English speaker, not being able to contribute or feeling a bit behind. So how did this frustration affect your behavior over the period of the exercise? Those of you who felt great, because some of you also felt fine, which is also good, but those of you who felt a bit frustrated, who felt behind, did it somehow affect your behavior during the exercise?
Yeah, I think I was just forced to focus on a few selected points. I really had to choose what to communicate to the group.
So it relates to adapting,
Yeah.
narrowing down, okay. And now imagine if you are feeling like this, not just during 20-minute exercise, but you feel like this constantly as part of your job. How do you think it would affect you, your motivation, your behavior?
That would be horrible. I would not.
What would make it so horrible?
I mean, I think I've actually been in that situation a couple of times where a previous company was very Dutch, so I'm not Dutch. I do understand it quite well, but I'm definitely not as quick speaking it in a professional setting. So in those cases, I would ask everybody to switch back to English because, it would be, I would just feel like, hello, I'm also here, like, please involve me, listen to what I have to say. But if this was a permanent state that you can't choose, then I would want to kind of leave that situation.
At some point, right? So it's really something that, and as you said, so this exercise, in essence, this exercise was very much about inclusion. How much do you feel included? Because you had a diverse team, but the whole question, do you feel included in your diverse team? And what very often happens in diverse teams, so before I show you how it affected your decision, but what very often happens in diverse teams, in some of your teams, it happened a bit more, in some of them, it happened a bit less. Actually, you still did quite well. Also, another story from executive MBA program. Once what happened that actually not only non-English speaker felt frustrated, but also English speaker was so frustrated that the non-English speaker was slowing down the discussion. But at some point, I hear English speaker shouting at the non-English speaker, "You are fired." Because the non-English speaker was really fighting to get an attention, and the English speaker was not even looking at the exam. So then at some point, the English speaker got really irritated and said, "Okay, you are fired." So, but these are some experiences. I'm very happy I didn't hear anything like this here in the room, but in essence, what is often happening within organizations, right? So that some members, and here I have native, non-native speakers, but it can be majority versus minority. It can be extroverted versus more introverted members, right? So it can be different dimensions where certain members start dominating the discussion and start excluding some members. So these members, they try to raise the white flag. They really try to get attention. They really try to adapt and to fit in. But at the same time, this creates a lot of anxiety in them. So that over time, they start giving up. Their motivation dies. So they don't want to contribute anymore because anyway, they are not listening. And what majority people might think, okay, these people are not motivated. These people are not interested. They are not really contributing. So they start excluding them even more. And this creates this negative cycle. So in that sense, inclusion, it's one of the fundamental elements or factors that determines whether diversity leads to positive effects or negative effects. So one of the reasons why diversity leads to conflicts, lack of trust, lack of information sharing is when there is no inclusion within the teams. Another thing, we talked about how it made some of you feel, right? That some of you felt frustrated, some of you felt that you need to adapt to minority members. But let's have a look at how it affected the quality of the decision that you took. So very quickly, this is all the information that you had, that the production cost is 10,000, you want to sell it at the profit margin of 20%, marketing cost 2,000, and the new battery costs 3,600. So these are the people who had this information. Did you all get to this information? Yeah. Now, very interesting point. For you to calculate which market to enter. So you had middle class population size. This is all of you had, including the CEO. All of you had. You all had information that wants to replace cars for less than 20K and less than 30K. But in order to calculate the numbers, we need to know out of this population, how many people actually own the cars? What's the percentage? This is the piece of information that was distributed among these 4 members. Have you discussed this information?
Only for marketing.
Only for marketing.
We do just for the ones who want to replace.
But for you to understand, yeah, so you need to. So for you to calculate these numbers, you need to share this information with each other. If I can have your attention back, because we have 5 minutes. We are a bit over time, but I want to finish within 5 minutes. So I'm showing this not because I'm checking your finance skills. It's not about that, but it's about the fact that very often in teams, it's not only how people feel within teams when they're being excluded, but it also very much affects the quality of decisions that you take. Because people might not share the information because they might think it's not important, because anyway, majority members know best. Majority members might not proactively listen to other members, right? So in that sense, it's not only about how people feel, but it also eventually affects the quality of decisions that you take and whether you realize the potential of diversity that you have. So now, this is in essence. So that's why when we talk about diversity, I always give this metaphor that diversity is being invited to the party. Inclusion reflects whether people dance with you at the party, whether people talk to you at the party. So in that sense, it's very important not just to create diversity, but also to dance with people at the party. So first of all, some people are not invited to the party at all. So here is the statistic of female representation in executive teams across the countries. And you can see that this is basically companies with at least one woman in executive, and this is the average representation. So you can see already some countries are doing better, but still there are many countries where there is a lot of room for improvement. Here, another thing that I really like to show is that in New York Times, they published this thing that among CEO 1,500 companies, there are more CEOs with the name John and David than all women CEOs together. And when this was published, I don't know if it's a joke or not, but I heard that after this was published, a lot of people in the US started naming their children John and David, or David, because they thought, okay, this is the way for me to make sure my child becomes the CEO. So, but also in the Netherlands recently, there was this huge campaign where a lot of women, they actually changed their name to Peter, just to show that there are more Peter CEOs in the Netherlands than all female CEOs together. So, but the whole question, once people are in, so there is also this issue happening. One of my MBA students was telling me his wife went for a job interview in the US. She's Indian. And when she came, the secretary approached her and said, oh, you are one of the diversity candidates. Please come in. Oh, no. And we may say that the secretary was not the smartest woman. Maybe, I don't know. But I think it's not so much problem with her. I think the problem is with the company. That I'm pretty sure she's not the only person who calls people being non-American, being minority candidate. So what we can do about it? First of all, what I want to share with you, there has been research which was published recently by Elad Sherf and colleagues, where they actually, what they showed is that the more you identify on top level, so they looked at the senior managers, senior leaders, the more they identify with the organization, the less likely they are likely to see issues with discrimination and lack of inclusion within organizations. So in that sense, one of the things to keep in mind is that if you really like your organization, if you really feel that your organization is part of you, so you have high level of identification with your organization, then be aware that you might become a bit blind and you might not see issues which are within your organization. So in that sense, what I want to start with is basically encourage you to start with yourself, really looking at, do you actually notice these things? That's the first thing. Another thing to do, again, ask yourself, do I treat everyone equally? How do I react when people disagree with me? When people provide an idea different from mine? Then also, do I encourage everyone's participation? Do I truly invite people to disagree with me and to basically show certain objections? Do I and others speak up and express different opinions within the team? So in that sense, you don't need to give me an answer to this question, but I really encourage you to openly ask yourself these questions. I teach this, but sometimes I also ask these questions to myself, because sometimes I notice that I might also not be very open for other people's ideas. Very honest concession, but this is true. So that's why I think it's very important to start with yourself. And final things, within teams, to make sure that people speak up, there are two things that are needed. first of all, it's psychological safety. People need to be confident that there are no negative repercussions if they say opinion that is different from what majority thinks. This is what we all know, that it's important to have safety. But there is another thing, which is perceived impact. A lot of people might feel safe to speak up, but they know even if I say something, nothing is going to happen. Why would I bother? So in that sense, it's very important that people also feel that that if they say something, they're going to be listened. It doesn't mean that you need to implement every single idea of your employee, but make sure at least to get back to them when you cannot implement it and tell them why you couldn't implement it. And the final thing that I want to share with you basically is that topic of inclusion is very broad. I'm currently doing a project with the Dutch maritime sector where we're measuring the level of inclusiveness of the Dutch maritime sector across different organizations. And these are different concepts that we are looking at, talking about things that we could or could not measure within organizations. So these are all the things that we are measuring. Psychological safety and impact, how much people speak up, how much people remain silent on work issues, employee treatment issues, perceptions of inequality for women, for non-Dutch, inclusive climate, competitive climate, whether managers solicit input from their employees, how managers react to employees' input, as well as we look at some well-being indicators. But this is just the final slide that I had to share with you, that the topic of diversity is broad and inclusion is broad. So I would say the main takeaway that I really want you to take from this session is to really think about how inclusive are you, and to really think about, do you actually make sure that everyone around you with whom you are working today feel equally included, and do you treat everyone equally? Thank you very much. And I'm happy to answer your questions now during the break time. Otherwise, enjoy your time, enjoy this day. It was an absolute pleasure meeting you. So thank you so much.